Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator, and today we are back in our flight from Tucson to Los Angeles following the tutorial guide that we have available for the A320X by flybywire. We're going to be taking a look at the AutoLand procedures today. Now the reason why I don't just skip over to a landing and start the video at the landing portion is because if there's any mistakes that are made during the pre-flight or configuration, I want you guys to be able to have that context. However, as always, there are chapters found in the description below. You guys can feel free to skip down to where it says AutoLand Begin. But I do recommend that you guys will follow it from the top of descent, as descent all the way down to the touchdown is where things really matter here. Alright, so without any further delay, let's go ahead and jump into the cockpit and get our aircraft going. We're going to be setting up the aircraft very quickly today, so if you guys have any questions about how to do any of these, please be sure to check out any of my previous videos of the A320 as I go through all of the configuration steps. We will be going over a couple of new features that can be found in the EFB. This is the experimental version found by Flybywire's installer. And if you guys haven't checked out the new installer, make sure you guys go to their website at flybywire.com and download the latest version of it, as it gives you some pretty cool options. You can choose between the stable, development, or experimental version. Alright, so with that in mind, let's get up top and let's start getting her powered on. We have battery 1, battery 2. Let's start the ADIRS alignment process. Crew oxygen supply is set. Emergency exit lights are armed. Seatbelts are on, and no portable devices lights turned on as well. Turn our wing and nav lights on. And let me adjust. That's what it's doing. It's checking out my switches on my HOTAS here. So give me just a second here. There we go. Now we're all matched up. Fuel pumps we will leave off until we're ready to start the APU and the aircraft is properly fueled. So let's step on downstairs here. Turn our displays on, and actually let's turn on external power. There we go. While the displays, or while the system's spinning up, we'll adjust our displays here. Beautiful. And let's turn on the EFB by simply giving it a click. Okay, coming on down to the MCDU, first thing we're going to do is get our information loaded. So I already have a flight plan created in SimBrief. We're just going again from... Oh, there it goes. That's weird. Get out of here. Stupid Adobe. Alright. So we go to the initialization page, do the initialization upload request. Now before we go any further, let's swing back over to the MCDU menu, go to ATSU. Airline Operational Control, Performance Weights and Balances. We're going to hit load on our fuel. See the aircraft jolt a little bit. Come over to our payload and hit load again. And again, the aircraft will bounce a bit. Go back over here to the AOC menu. And we're going to check out ATIS here. And we're going to select Kilo Tango Uniform Sierra as our departure. Throw that in there, select departure, and hit send. While that's going, we'll go ahead and come back on over to the flight plan page. Mercy. There we go. Select Tucson. Now, the en route flight plan is already set when you do the SimBrief integration. However, you still need to set your SID and your STAR. Remember, you got standard instrument departure and standard terminal arrival route. This is how air traffic control regulates the paths that aircraft take in and out of their airspace. And the reason why this isn't auto-populated when you do a SimBrief upload is because ultimately you can hope for and request whichever SID and STAR you want, but that decision comes down to air traffic controller. They decide how you enter and exit their airspace. So we're going to assume that we got the clearance we're looking for. We're going to go to departures. We're going to be using runway 29er right. assuming our ATIS matches up with this in a second, and if not, I'll show you how to change it. It's real simple. We're going to be using the Wildcat 3 departure today following the Gila Bend transition. and hit insert, and then we'll come on down to KLAX, and we'll be going to arrivals here, and we're going to be looking for the ILS 25 right today. Coming on in from the Hollywood 1 star, using the CVU transition to get onto the approach. So the cool thing about these, you want to read them backwards with the stars. So we're flying from the Gila Bend. We'll be jumping onto the J104 airway, and I'll show you guys where that's at real quick here. Let's go ahead and come over here. And we're going to use this menu here. Here we go. So here's what we're doing. KTUS, using 29er right, the Wildcat 3 SID, or Standard Instrument Departure, transitioning onto the Gila Bend, or using the Gila Bend transition, then jumping onto the J104 airway, taking that to the Messy exit, if you will, or waypoint. From Messy, we're going to point the nose directly at Eastwind, use Eastwind to jump onto the Hollywood 1, and then from the Hollywood 1, come into KLAX and 25 right. Okay, so if we come back over here, we can see the same thing. Eastwind to the Hollywood 1, Hollywood 1 all the way down to CVU, and then CVU, from there we will turn on to the initial waypoint for the ILS 25 right approach. Let's go ahead and just click that on in there. And now that we have our company message up here, we should anyway, right here displayed. Let's go back to the AOC menu. It's easier if I just reset the camera there. So again, back to ATSU, back to AOC. Go to received messages. There's our ATIS. And let's go ahead and scroll on down. We can see our altimeters. Excuse me. Our altimeter is 2984, but what we're looking for is the departing runways. Departing runway 21. We don't have a runway 21. You know what? Let's print this out. Sometimes when it gets funky like this, it's easier just to print it. Let's come back over here. There it is. You can see it popping out. As soon as you see it, you can click on it and come back up front. And there we go. All right, that's better. All right, runway is in use is departing runway 21. I didn't think the perpendicular runway was ever used anymore. Huh, I don't think it still is. So what we're going to do is we're going to call it 29er right. We're going to use the 29er right departure because runway 21 isn't in use anymore as far as I can recall. But maybe I'm mistaken on that. Anyway, it's a perpendicular runway that goes across the two runways here in Tucson. But anyway, so we're just going to use 29er right. Let's go back to our initialization page, and we're going to go over to initialization B. We can click on our zero fuel weight center of gravity, throw that in there. For block fuel, I like to just take it right from here once we've loaded the aircraft. Oh, hey, speaking of which, hi. There we go. And so we'll kick that back down. And that's 4.9 on the gasoline. Let that calculate. From here, we'll move on to the performance page. And we're going to go for flaps 1 on the takeoff. We got plenty of runway. Even with it raining outside, we're still... Tucson 29 right is 11,000 feet, so we got plenty of runway. We shouldn't need any more than flaps 1. 18,000 feet on the transition altitude anytime when in the United States. V1, remember this is the speed that at which once you reach this speed, you must take off. Even if you see Elvis, you got to run him down. All right, rotation speed, the speed at which we start pulling the nose back, and V2. If we were to lose an engine because Elvis went into it, we would still continue to accelerate and climb. Our thrust reduction altitude, this is the altitude above ground at which the nose will slightly pitch down and the aircraft will begin to accelerate and get ready for its climb. All right, groovy stuff. So that's pretty much it for the MCDU configuration. This is pretty easy. 136, so we're going to come up to the FCP here, forward control panel. And we need to throw 146 up in the box. Oop, wrong button. Ah. Oh, it's not working. Interesting. Alright, well, that is. So that works out. Alright, so we'll go 146, and the whole point of the plus 10 knots is just because it provides a better climb. The larger aircraft will use plus 15 and sometimes plus 20 depending on the conditions. But it's just to provide a better climb rate. There's no other real grand reason than that. Altitude, we'll set our initial altitude to 12,000 feet today. Got some nasty weather we're going to be climbing out of, but everything should work out just fine. Oop, come on. Wow, that's sensitive. Oh, I know why. It's because you're running. Let me terminate that. There we go. Okay. All right, and we'll set our runway heading once we get closer to getting out for departure. Alright, so we have our screens turned on. That storm seems to be passing, but I think we're going to be in it for quite a bit here. And now we are ready to configure the aircraft for pushback and taxi. But before we do, I wanted to show you guys a few things on the EFB. So stepping on down to the EFB, you can come down here to company if it hasn't been issued before, but I do believe it saves on over. But what you need to do is take your username here, and I highly recommend just clicking on this, copying it from here. Okay, so we're just going to grab it like that. Click on in here, and then paste it with Control V. Okay, don't try to type it, because any of these key commands that are actually bound in the sim will trigger whatever their action is. So that's just an easier way to go from there. Swing on over to the dashboard, click on From Sim Brief, and now we have our departure and arrival meet our information. So that makes it very, very handy to configure some of the information. For example, our altimeter of 2984 we'll need to grab here and set in the cockpit. On the dispatch page, you have your aircraft's max weights and performance information. OFP, once you've loaded it, you can just simply left click and hold and use it to scroll through the flight plan that you would have in the sim brief. You can also zoom in and out, increase the display, which makes it very, very handy. Just a neat thing to do. From your fuel, if you don't want to load it through the MCDU, as we saw back over there, you can simply set it in here as you would like to desired, and then you can tell it to basically start. And you also have your refuel time settings down here, which you can adjust those. Payload still currently inoperable. A flight inoperable performance. We've seen this before. This is our top of descent calculator. And I'll show you guys this later on once we're up in the air and getting close to our descent. Company name we just went over. And ground configuration. We can now, from here, use our doors, bring up the jetway, call the fuel truck if we want, bring the baggage, bring up the external power, the rear door, catering cart, and the pushback is functional. Click over here on the settings cog and you have some volume settings that you guys can adjust, but this is the one that I really wanted to show you guys. This is super handy. There's been a couple other videos about this, and I figured that I should probably share it as well because this is very, very slick. Okay, so here's what we're going to do here. I have the Bravo throttle quadrant, and the Bravo throttle quadrant has some visual identifying marks that would make some of this very easy to get the aircraft into its proper position. So I'm going to show you guys how we're going to do this. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my throttles all the way forward. Okay? And we want dual axis because we have two of them. Alright, so what we're going to be doing here, I had to restart here, I screwed something up here. But first we're going to start, I want to start with my throttles all the way in the back. Okay? So we're going to call this idle. Okay? And this is just throwing them all the way in the back. Okay, anything outside of this range, the throttles will be out of idle. Okay, from idle, we're going to move up to the climb position. Alright, so I'm going to sort of put them right about here. And I want them to be right about the same. Give or take. And I'm going to set a pretty big window for the climb position. So I'm going to go here and here. And I'm going to push them forward pretty significantly. That we have a nice, like I said, large window, and we got one at 0.3. Okay, and let's sort of do like that. And so let's be climb. So from here to here. And then next is the flex. So I'm going to again push the throttles up pretty far forward, go flex here, and I'm going to set, and let's see here, this one needs to come, nope, backwards. Close enough, there we go, set and set. And then move them forward just a bit more. We don't use flex temp very often anymore, at least I don't. And then everything from here, again, I'm going to push just a bit forward. So 0.8 and 0.8, we're going to go to toga, set and set. And then the rest of the way forward, set and set. Okay, and then we're going to hit apply and save and go back. And now we should be able to see all of this down here in the throttle position. So let's come down all the way to idle. Now if I want to go quickly to climb, you can see they jump right in. If I want to go into flex. And then finally, obviously toga. But it's that climb one that's a big one. To be able to very quickly drop them into position there. Okay? Pull it back. Boom. Very handy. Okay? So, anyway, I just wanted to show you guys that really quick because that's a really handy feature for this particular aircraft, as many of us don't have this many detents in the throttle configuration itself. So, very cool. Once again, fly-by-wire team showing their arms and really flexing strong for us, because that's a really awesome feature. All right, so with that in mind, now let's get ready to complete the rest of the startup procedures. All right, so now we need to set our altimeter, 2984. Set our flight directors, set our constraints, flight directors and constraints. Oops, I think I double tapped that one. I did. And again here, 2984. Let's brighten that up even more. All right. We'll come up top, get that APU started, get that beacon light on, and actually get those fuel pumps going. I should have done that before I flipped on the APU, but oops. And then once the APU is ready and we're ready for engine start, we'll go ahead and turn on the APU bleed. Coming on down to the rear panel here, we're going to simulate we got our clearance. And so we're going to set it as 1532. Turn our transponder on. TCAS will remain in standby until ready to go. Cockpit doors locked. Predictive wind shear stays off for now. And weather radar stays off for now. At this point, we're just waiting for the APU to be available so we can switch on over. Set our flight plan up on our page here. I can't wait for these two to be independent. That'll be awesome. And then when we get that, should be, and there's APU available right on time. Flip that bad boy on up there. And let's get our pushback going. And so once again, everything controlled from the EFB. This is super nice. We're going to go back to the ground menu. Say goodbye to the jetway, say goodbye to the external power, and call our tug. It's important to remember once you call the tug to pay attention to the nose wheel steering disconnect. If that is alive, you will be unable to steer the aircraft. The cool pushback recorder app that I was using in previous videos unfortunately seems to have been broken by the latest update, so unfortunately we can't use that today, but that's alright. Luckily fly-by-wire is once again here to save our day. We're going to turn the parking brake off for now, just because we're not going to get any kind of audible command telling us to disengage it. With the tug hooked up, we can tell it to start pushing us back. While that's going, we'll switch our engine master mode over to ignition, start the chronometer up here, and flip on engine 2. I could have sworn I tapped that, and remember to disconnect external power before you start pushing back. They don't like it when you start dragging their cart around. Now the thing about this method is you sort of have to wing it here. See what I did there? Wing it. Boom. Alright, we're going to try from right here, and that should be... Yeah, alright. How's our engine over here doing? Still starting? Okay. Those are wicked looking clouds. Not too bad. I thought I did pretty good there. There we go. Alright, so let's go ahead and straighten her out at this point. And we can go ahead and actually stop the pushback. Stopped it too soon. That's okay. Set that parking brake. And we'll get the taxi light on. And let's start engine 2. Or engine 1, technically. Go ahead and restart that chronometer. And fire it up. Our heading should be 303. I don't know why that's not working. That's kind of disappointing. Huh, works for everything but. Anyway, so we'll set this down to 3. Let's go the other way. That's probably the faster way. 303 degrees should be our final heading for takeoff. There we go. And I think, should we do one last sweep here? Engine master mode can go back into normal operation. TCAS comes on, predictive wind shear comes on. Flaps 1 set. Spoilers armed. APU bleed disconnected and APU shut off. And I think we are ready for taxi, folks. Alright, so slowly advancing power on the throttles. Maybe a lot advancing throttle on the powers. What did I just say? Now ideally we should be below 10 knots when turning this aircraft. Takeoff configuration, chime that cabin. And I'll see you guys at the runway. Alright, from here we're going to get those strobe lights turned on and landing lights turned on. Alright, let's reset that chronometer from the engine start. Give it a tap for flight. 50% stabilized. Toga. Nose forward a few degrees until we pass through 80 knots. Come on, baby. Got a nice little crosswind coming at us. Wheels coming up. Flaps up. Autopilot engaged. Approaching that thrust reduction altitude. There it is, levers in the climb. Oh, didn't go back quite far enough. And we're on our way. Bye-bye, Tucson. Alright, so from here we're going to be climbing on up to our cruise altitude. We can go ahead and set that. We're going to be going to 24,000 feet today. Assuming the weather is okay up there, we may have to climb a bit above it depending on how bad it is or what we get into, but we'll just play that by ear. 24,000 on the box. At 10,000 feet, landing light, taxi light, runway turn-off lights come off. At 18,000 feet, we give the down arrow click here on our barometer to set it back to 29902 or standard pressure. And then from there, we're just going up to the cruise altitude and hanging out until we reach our top of descent, which will be approximately 75-80 miles away from our destination of KLAX. So I will see you guys a little bit before the top of descent, where we will go over how to do the AutoLand procedures. And actually, stand by on that. There might be something interesting for you guys to see here. Are we in heading mode? Yes, we were. Alrighty then. When in doubt. I knew that looked weird. Alright, so as I was saying, taxi lights off, landing lights off. It's getting a little dark up here, so we'll turn a little bit of lighting on. Look at that. Looks kind of cool. Alright, so yeah, from here, 18,000 feet. Going to simply mouse down here until we get the down arrow, give it a left click, go into the standard pressure. What's your problem? Anti-ice. Good call. I didn't even think about that. It is certainly the weather for it. Let's get these gone. There we go. Now, they were in auto mode is my understanding, but still, I like to turn them on so I don't have to worry about it. Look at that, dude. That's nasty. Oof. This is brutal. Some of these, like, lightning strikes are kind of cool. Oh, wow. Look at that. Not bad for a simulator, guys. Not bad at all. Anyway, I will see you guys shortly before the top of descent. Alright everybody, welcome back. We're approaching our top of descent. We're a little early yet, but here's the dilemma we're in. If you take a look at our altimeter and speed indicator, they're frozen. Now, we have the anti-ice on. I thought it was maybe the anti-ice, and I'm hoping it's still an icing issue, because if we go outside... Oh, actually that's cleared up as well. Although, why are the speed brakes out? And the flaps are down. I have no idea what's going on there. Again, every time you hit the escape menu, things get weird. Anyway, so unfortunately they haven't come back on since. So I'm hoping that when we descend, we might be able to hopefully warm things up a little bit. Now, we're a little early to descend. See, I'm worried that we actually are at 19,000. This is the experimental version of the A320, so that could very easily be a part of it. I'm going to go ahead and shut the ice systems off. We shouldn't need them in the weather we're in, at least. And we're going to see if we can still complete all this. We're just going to have to sort of wing it and see how things go. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and program the MCDU for our arrival. So we're going to go to the performance page, go to the next phase. Oh, dork. And we're going to look at the approach phase. Oh, excuse me, hiccup. Let's go to our, over here, and we're going to find our information. So wind 260 at 12 knots, temperature 14, altimeter 29908. So 2.9.8. Temperature 14. Actually, I think it was temperature 15, but that's all right. And then 260 at 14, and it was the wind speed. And transition altitude, always 18,000 feet. Now, because we're going to do a AutoLand, we're not going to be setting up any minimum heights. So we're just going to type no space Delta Hotel for no decision height. Okay? And we should see that come up on the MCDU when it's time, or on the PFD. Then we're going to go to our radio menu, make sure that we have the ILS frequency set up. That is correct. Alright, so what we'll do here is we're going to set our altitude down to the 13,000 feet for Sivu. See if we can't start getting some controls back. I'm not sure why it went straight to vertical speed mode, but that's okay. It's come down at about 1,500 feet per minute. Set our speed for 200 knots. Actually, we'll do 240 knots. Set our altimeter. And at this point, we'll just descend down and hope for the best. Hoping we get some of that PFD information back. See, our target is in there, but it's got nothing on the tape. Alright, so we're finally getting ready to turn on to the approach. We are flying incredibly fast. We've lost our speed tape here, but we're monitoring our ground speed and airspeed up here. We're looking for 240 knots. I'm actually going to keep bringing that down to 200 at this point. I'm going to activate the LS, start searching for the ILS frequency. We're still a ways out yet, about between 25 and 18 nautical miles typically. I'll pick it up. There's 10,000. We want to come all the way down to 7,000 now. Come on, get going. Yeah, that is a crazy descent rate. Mercy. So this is the experimental version. Keep that in mind. Obviously has some bugs to work out. You know what, let's 6,000 feet per minute. Come on, man, what the heck? Let's call this about 2,000 feet per minute. How about that? Hey, we got our speed tape back. How about that? It finally happened. Okay, good. Good, good, good. Yeah, we need to slow down. Reduce that descent rate so the aircraft can slow down faster. Alright, so those of you who've been watching thus far, hopefully you picked up on a few things. Let's start getting this girl ready to fly here. Okay, so we were dealing with lag spikes there. We're still dealing with lag spikes. But we are inside our range here, so we're going to go gear down at 8 miles here. We got flaps 1 already set. I'm going to move it down to flaps 2. Oh, BS. Let's go ahead and kick this up into manage mode for manage speed. Let's just start slowing us down to the 130 knots. We also have all of our lights on. You have to forgive the horrible performance. I am not liking this latest sim update. Doesn't seem to matter where I fly. I'm getting some pretty rough rides. Alright, so let's see here. We're going to go all there, chime the cabin. The approach mode is active. We're inside 5 miles. Going to go flaps 3. Oh, flaps full, excuse me. It's fully configured. Now I'm going to engage autopilot 2. And at this point, you can see Cat 3 dual, autopilots 1 and 2. Everything is lit up. We are now configured for an auto land. And this will be going into our guide. Now, the only difference is here is as we land and get close, we're going to hear that retard warning that we get when we always land the aircraft. Only this time, it's a command, and that's very important to recognize. You need to make sure that when it says that, you pull the throttles all the way back to the idle position. Let's also arm those auto brakes. I thought I clicked that already. We're using low because we have a very long runway. From here, we let the aircraft do all of the work. Again, remember, this is an experimental version. I do not believe this is available in the development version or the stable version yet. This is also a custom autopilot made specifically by Fly-by-Wire, so some of the issues is still them ironing things out, which is totally cool.
500.
Alright, so we got the land command. Alright, hands on the throttles.
50, 40, 30.
There's the flare.
20, retard.
And retard. Throttles at idle.
5.
Roll out. Thrust reverses open. They're supposed to be. Must be another axis that's broken. Alright. And you can see autopilot 2 automatically disengages. We'll disengage autopilot 1. And turn off here. Okay, so big takeaways from this, okay? Minus all the craziness that you guys saw, the rest of it was actually perfectly fine. The real only difference between a standard, Cat 1 or Cat 2 landing and the AutoLand is you must make sure you have an ILS. ILS is required for an AutoLand. And then after you've activated the approach mode, once you're comfortable and the aircraft's configured, simply engage Autopilot 2 and bring it in. You still need to monitor everything very, very closely. Still watch your airspeed, still watch altitudes and things like that. Pay attention to your charts. But other than that, that's the short version of how to do an AutoLand. Now, it was sort of a crazy flight, a little bit on the hectic side. Hopefully in future releases things will go a bit smoother. I'm not sure why we lost the airspeed tape the way we did with the anti-ice on, so I'm thinking in this particular version there's an issue there with the anti-ice, but I'm sure that's something that will be resolved at some point in time. But as always, guys, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good jazz, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Take care, folks.